just use is basically good enough. So that's fine. Hello and welcome to another Bevvies and Books. I'm hosting this time, and you'd think that would mean more carnage. However, we're all really sleepy, so chances are it will be less carnage than usual.
But we also have 2 books to talk about, so it might be a lot more carnage.
No, I think it'll be less carnage. I think just generally less carnage. Hey, Ali.
Weirdly, that might have been the best opener we've ever done. No offense, Danny.
Listen,
I've done
the chaos.
Okay, so just to clarify for those watching, every single month we have a cocktail that we then base a prompt on. We read the book over the month and then we talk to you about the books we read for that prompt specifically. However, this month we are late on one of the prompts, so we're going to do 2. The first one was The Wizard of Oz, which none of us are drinking. Does anyone here actually have a drink? Like, should we go around and say if we have drinks? I've got water. I've got very, very tasty lemon-flavoured water. Hannah?
I have a pre-made bramble. Mm-hmm. So it's a cocktail. It's alcoholic.
Yeah, that's already better than me. Lizzie?
I'm still trash and I'm still drinking Coke Zero. Like I have all weekend.
It's seen you through, and I think for that you should thank them.
But I am repping flamingos, so
we love flamingos. We love flamingos. And Danny?
I am drinking the forbidden peach squash.
It's not forbidden. It just needs to be shared. For clarification, because I do feel called out by this, I had a go at Danny because I bought 2 bottles, 2-litre bottles of peach squash. And one of those bottles has been finished already within a week. And Lizzie and I have had a glass each.
For clarification, this size of glass too. It wasn't like a big pint glass or anything. No. It was
not like Danny's sippy cup. Show us that sippy cup again, Danny. If you could, put it next to your face. Yeah. That's why you're not allowed anymore. Except you just helped yourself. So I guess we don't care anyway.
The next batch will be on me.
So yes, the prompt was Wizard of Oz, and the book we had to read was either a retelling or a green cover. Usually Danny offers it out as to who can go first, but because I'm already mad at Danny, I think Danny should go first. Danny, tell us which retelling you read.
So I definitely didn't go for a green book. I tried to fit both like the aspects of the prompt in one, and I didn't have any green retelling, so I just went for 1,000 Chips by Natalie Haynes, which has been on my TBR for ages. I think I bought this like a year ago, and I've been trying to find a good reason to put it on my TBR, and every single time I've gone, but I can read a different one instead of this, even though I was really excited for this. Basically, Natalie Haynes tends to write stories that aren't Greek retellings that aren't told regularly, such as like what happened to the women of Troy and what happened when the Trojan War ended, and rather than following, Odysseus and Ajax and all those fun men, what happened to the women and how did they cope? What happened to them? And so this story is it follows about 5 to 8 different women, I think. And there's definitely like a narrator in it as well. And sorry, my voice is going already. We love this. And it was really, really good. I started this physically and then went out on to the audiobook, and you follow characters like Clytemnestra, Calliope, as she says in the audiobook, Calliope, which I always thought was Calliope. And I
always say Calliope, but that's because I learned it through reading as opposed to saying it out loud. Much like I said Hermie 1 as a kid, so don't trust me to pronounce things correctly. That's fine.
Hate that. It's definitely Calliope. I hated everything about what just happened.
Lizzie, I hate you, and no one asked. So, Danny, as you were.
Oh, this is the energy that we brought.
I'm sorry. So when Lizzie comes in and says really aggressively that she hates something, I have to just sit there and take it. But Lizzie gets to pout and be a baby about it. I see how it is.
Excuse me, I said it about the language and then you made it real personal for a fucking second. I was talking about like how the audiobook said it. Why?
Anyway, So it follows all these different women and what happens to them, and some of whom end up better than where they started, and some of them definitely not. But I found it really, really fun. I really enjoyed it, and especially like the audiobook because it was narrated by the author. So Natalie Haynes, one, because it's her own story, I think it always just adds something to it. I feel the same when it comes to like mythos or heroes that I was like, what was the second one called? Stephen Fry. Obviously, Stephen Fry is known for his audiobook work.
I was going to say, because the other one you said was Neil Gaiman, and I was like, you've not, Natalie Haynes did all of these.
No, I know. So Natalie Haynes narrates this as well, and I really, really enjoyed it. I find it really hard to describe because it's about so many different women. I'm like, what happened to which character and all of that? But I struggle to make words currently. Okay. Which is why it's for the best that's on your channel now.
Yeah, no worries. Just to clarify, has everyone else here read it? Because I've read it, and I'm pretty sure Lizzie and Hannah has. Excellent. So this is the first time where we've all already read the book. So I'm quite intrigued. Was there a perspective that you liked more than others? Because I know for a fact there is one that is so sassy that it is absolutely my favourite. And I'm almost pretty sure it's like the same for Hannah and Lizzie, so I'm just interested.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember their name. But Odysseus's wife, who's just yeah, she's my favorite just because she's so sassy.
Good point. It was a tie between Penelope and Calliope for me, because Calliope is like, I'm telling you this story and you're not really going to listen to me because you're right. You're because Calliope's kind of the narrator of the story. She's not, so she's talking to a bard or a muse, and I think it kind of insinuates that she's talking to Orpheus, but I don't know for sure. But she's like, I'm telling you all these stories about these amazing women, and you're not going to listen to any of it. You're just.
You should be writing this down. It was my favorite bit, and it's like halfway through, she's just like, "You've stopped writing. What's that all about? Like, have I lost you?" Like, Clytemnestra is my other favorite one because she's such a bitch.
She's like, I'm going to stick out for my sisters and my children, and everyone else can go fuck themselves.
Basically.
Which, honestly, fair enough. No, but I really enjoyed it. I blazed through this one. I started it physically. Took me a bit, kind of let it fall to the side for a little bit. Picked up the audiobook, listened to it while I was driving, and that was the way, pardon me, to go about it for me.
Good. Have you read anything else by Natalie Haynes? Have you done Pandora's Jar or Children of Jocasta?
No, not yet. I've got Pandora's Jar right there. But I haven't read it yet.
Sorry, Lizzie's cat just cried, but I looked immediately to the back door to see if it was Blue crying there, and Percy was just sat there like, was it me? And now I can see that's where Lizzie's gone, is to let the cat in because he's crying outside her door. I don't know what it is about these cats. They hate whenever Lizzie's got her door shut. They just cannot cope. So whilst Lizzie has disappeared, Hannah, I think the mantle falls to you now to tell us about your retelling and or green cover.
Okay, well, I'm terrible at remembering what my book was about when it's fresh in my memory, so we'll see how this goes. But I fulfilled both its green and its retelling, and I read Sweet Black Waves by Christina Perez, and it's a Tristan and Isolde retelling, which I was kind of vaguely familiar with from like a podcast I'd listened to like years ago. So I knew it was going to be sad or like major betrayal at least at some point. And the book goes along like quite swimmingly, quite happy. You follow along Branwen, who's not a major, well, she's kind of important, but not like a major character in the original to my knowledge, because again, I'm vaguely familiar with it. And she's like really devoted to, I've forgotten what they've called her in this, but Isolde. It might have actually been Isolde still. It was similar. I'm sure they changed it slightly, but I can't remember exactly. Who is the like princess to the realm that they're living in. And a prince, which is Tristan, washes ashore, but he's like from the enemy completely. She doesn't know that at first, helps him out. They fall in love, sort of thing. And it was quite like enjoyable. Got through it very quickly, and then like maybe the last 3 pages is where the betrayal comes in, and they really wallop it in, and you're just there like, okay, what did I just read then from just the last 3 pages? So yeah, I don't know what to make of it in the end. I think I gave it 4 stars, if I remember right. Might have been 4.5. Because I say I did enjoy it, and it was very easy reading. But just that end, how catastrophically it all goes pear-shaped and different, was quite unexpected, and kind of knocked me for 6 and made me really angry.
Amazing.
So yeah,
Is it setting up for a series? Is it that kind of
yeah,
thing? Or
it is. The next one's Wild Savage Stars. It's on the back, and then I think there's a third, but I can't remember what that one's called.
See, it
But
bothers
I
me when they
think
do that, where it's a really dramatic last 3 pages, because it's like,
yeah. So I did enjoy it, and she's also got at the back like a glossary, and it is like really steeped in, like, she's done a like homework on like all the Celtic myth and how things would have been pronounced in the different kingdoms that would have been sort of around, and invented like some of her own words, but told you where she's got like the inspiration and like parts of the word from like the original Celtic and things. So I really appreciated that as well. So I'm so tired. I feel like I'm slurring my words.
I keep yawning.
But yeah, no, I did enjoy it, but I'm also not sure whether I'm up for the drama that I think could ensue.
I love you. Like, am I going to pick up the second one? I'm not sure.
It's lovely and floppy. I love a floppy paperback.
Is it a YA or is it an adult? Yeah,
it is YA. I don't think there's anything in it that I'd say would make it more adult. I think it would firmly sit in YA. Like, yeah, I can't think of anything that I'd say, you know, maybe more towards like what they tried branding as new adult. I think it's YA. Yeah.
I love it. New adult. Like, I really enjoyed the way.
Well, they tried, didn't they? And didn't really take off. And now it's kind of a thing, but kind of not. I don't know.
I think the problem is with any new genre is it's always really hard to define it when there's only like 3 or 4 books you can talk about it in reference to. I always imagine that new adult books are books that have YA pacing, so it moves very quickly. It isn't necessarily lots of scenery setting. It's a lot of like plot and dialogue, but with adult themes like sex and violence. I kind of feel like it's going to be that cross between, because I think sometimes people think it's an age thing, and I think with middle grade it is. You always age up your characters 2 years older than your target audience, but I think when it comes to adult is adult. So if it's got adult content, it's probably going to be new adult. But then it is like every other genre, just a marketing thing, isn't it? Like, it's got nothing to do with. So.
I struggle pinning it a lot of the time, but yeah, no, it was good. Like, there's bits of myth. I kind of wish that was in there a bit more. Like, they talk about like some of the gods and goddesses a bit, because Branwen's, can't remember if it was descended or just sort of favoured by. I can't remember the exact circumstance, but like there's magic involved with that. So there's a bit of magic to it as well. Like, I did really enjoy it, but it's just not something I'm like shouting from the hilltops about.
No, that's fair.
Is there any like magic in it, like Celtic myths? Like, is there any like mythical creatures? Because Celtic myth is steeped in like witchcraft and like fairies, for example, like Cornish pixies, and like you have
exactly.
But then like Celtic is also Scottish and Welsh and Cornwall. That was the whole Celtic region, and they have really interesting mythological magics. All of those different things. Does that play into it at all?
So she's a healer, so it's that kind of side of it. And there is like a magical tree that she goes to and like sacrifices some blood and gets some extra powers and stuff, and sees her parents, I think, at that point, who died. Like, it's kind of that kind of mystical side of it.
See, now you're
I was going to say Lizzie was like tapped out, and then you were like blood magic, and Lizzie's like, tell me more.
But yeah, there is a map at the beginning, and it's very heavily in. Where's the map? I'm sure there's a map. Did I make that up?
I thought you said there's a map, and I was like, what do you mean? Do you have to do like an equation?
There we go.
Yeah, you're not allowed to open it if you know what pi is.
It is heavily based on like Cornwall, Ireland, I can't point at things backwards. There's bits of Wales, like one region is called Dyfed. I can't remember how you pronounce that one still. Like, it is very heavily Celtic in the sense of the British Isles Celtic. Because I know there's different branches of it as well. Like, there's Brittany and stuff as well, isn't there?
I'm scared.
Yeah, I feel like you almost had Lizzie, and then you said it was set in like Cornwall, and Lizzie immediately went, I can't. Like,
this one, I think, feels more Ireland.
Okay, that's
and
better.
The enemies from the British Isles.
That sounds about right. Yeah, no, that
Let
feels
me
right.
check on that whereabouts. Hang on.
I just know that the last book that you read that took place in Cornwall, you absolutely hated. And maybe not the last one, but the one before that.
No, it was Lancelot, and that was because they got the location of somewhere in Cornwall completely incorrect, and I just couldn't get over it.
Well, considering this is heavily made up, just kind of loosely based on the geography and like Celticness sort of thing.
I might just pick it up. I think I want to pick it up just to see how I get. Blood magic and ghosts. Like, you sold me a different book at the beginning, and then you brought me back.
How can you tell?
I feel like I'm overselling it, but yeah, I did enjoy it, and it is a while ago. So, how much of things is probably a bit murky to me at this point because we've already established I'm terrible at remembering books.
That's fair.
Which works great for reviewing.
You quite like a retelling, though, don't you? I feel like I've seen quite a few of like the books on your read pile that could be seen as retellings of something else.
Yeah. I think I like having the twist on, like, I quite like historical fiction where they've based it on actual history but then twisted it a bit. Like, I like apparently being familiar with the subject matter a bit, but it being completely different, so you're still like guessing. But yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's like anything. I tend to find the fairy tale ones not as interesting. I enjoy them still, but I'd say out of all the retellings, they're usually, I think that's why I went folklore more.
Lizzie's heart is dying a little bit.
Yeah, I just died. I just lost a couple of years of my later years, to that shriveling sensation that just happened to me.
What did I do?
Lizzie loves a fairy tale retelling.
I do enjoy them. They're just, like, thinking of some of the ones I've read, they tend to rank lower than ones based on mythology and folklore.
That's fair.
That's fair enough. Do you have a favourite? Do you have a favourite retelling?
Oh, now this is hard because half the time I don't know anything's a retelling when I'm reading it, and then I find out later, and I'm like, because I don't read the blurbs of anything.
Oh.
So trying to then remember what was a retelling of something because I didn't go in knowing, and it's just like more of a tidbit that I either discover while reading it, going, this is familiar, or I do find out later. I'm like, what is my favourite? What have I read? That's the bigger question right now. I don't know. I'll get back to you on that. I'll have a think.
What do you think? Let's go to Lizzie. Lizzie, tell us about your retelling and/or green cover, because I know you've got lots to say.
Okay.
3 hours later.
I made a mistake. I didn't listen to Hannah. And I picked up For the Wolf by Hannah Witten, and I was warned off by this Hannah, this one. And this was actually her copy that she unhauled to me. And that should have been the clue that this was not
red flag.
Yeah, that should have been the red flag. And I was like, no, it's a Little Red Riding Hood retelling. Like, those are few and far between. Like, could be interesting. No, this is a load of shit. It's not a Red Riding Hood retelling, apart from maybe there's a wolf, but it's not. Don't be fooled. It's yet another Beauty and the Beast retelling. And this should not be marketed as a Little Red Riding Hood retelling, because it's not. It is not. And I got, no joke, 79 pages in and went, absolutely not. I can't do this again. It's another Beauty and the Beast retelling. I can't fucking do it. And honestly, it's so not worth it. It is so boring. because basically the premise is they have like this curse, they're next to this enchanted forest that's got this wolf, and like one of the queen's daughters or whatever, the bloodline fucking went into the forest and like killed the beast or whatever. The wolf, sorry, not the beast. Let's not get confused. He's a wolf. And then everything starts going weird again. And so then they have to relive this. And because she's the second born, she's given to the woods. I think actually they're given to the woods every time and they just never come back, which is kind of like, yeah, that bullshit. How shit is that? That's like, you're the second daughter and you're going to be sacrificed to a fucking wolf just because
Why would you have a second child? Can I just ask, why would you have a second child?
I don't think it's a choice,
So
Danny.
right?
I don't think protection works in this.
No, it's not that. It's literally, so for generations, she's like the first second born for like 700 years. And because of that, she's actually a twin that just happened to be born second. So that they're the first twins that have been born in like 700 years. Every other queen has intentionally only had one child. And there's like a whole like additional plot to like what happened to those other women. And it's the fact that for 700 years there has been no bride for the wolf. Because yeah, of course she's a bride. Of course it's creepy like that. And his power has been draining, which is why the woods are getting more powerful. And there's like all this really like insidious stuff in it. So it's one of those things where like, if you're like, oh, here's a plot hole, no, like that is clarified just in a really shit way.
Yeah, I'd like to say Hannah made that sound real interesting. It's not that interesting, just as a side. Like Hannah did well there to explain the plot in an interesting way. It's really fucking, that whole setup is just info dump, essentially, from these weird fucking religious people who turn up out of nowhere, and they're like a whole sisterhood, and they're kind of culty. And I hate that. I absolutely fucking hate that. And so the cover tricks you. And like, so I got to the bit where she goes into the forest. And then it turns out as a joke, her and her twin sister were like, lols, let's go into this enchanted forest where it's probably going to fucking kill us when we're children. Because, why the fuck not? Like, that's a bad idea. And then, so she knows the forest knows her. Bit weird. The only thing that makes this a Red Riding Hood retelling is that she goes into the woods in a red hood, in a red cloak. Good job. Yep, it's a Red Riding Hood retelling. She's wearing a red cloak. This made me unreasonably angry.
I don't think it's unreasonable. I don't think it's unreasonable because this was another book. I'm going to get on my high horse with you there, Lizzie. I can't even say high horse, but I'm there with you because, again, yeah, I was sold it as a Red Riding Hood retelling. And to be fair, I told you straight up it is not a Red Riding Hood retelling. And it was one of the books that I pre-ordered because at the time, the publisher were doing like, here are all of our gothic fantasies that are coming out. And you say gothic and fantasy, bitch, I'm there, right? I was so excited. And I love Hannah Witten on Twitter. She's really funny. She's really creative. Her whole vibe is very gothic. I love it. The book is so tame. It's so tame. And it promises to be this real like angsty, angry monster boy and his like love interest. And it's not that at all. He's just kind of like, Adam Driver on a bad day. Like it's not like
that's too polite, Hannah, because Adam that's far too fucking polite. This is Edward Cullen on a good day.
Oh my god, yeah, no, it is for sure. Edward Cullen with his WD-40. Like look, there's a whole bit.
I DNF'd this when she arrived at the house. And it was an overgrown, enchanted mansion. And I was like, why? Why did you do this? Why? If you wanted to do Beauty and the Beast, you could have done Beauty and the Beast. Like, no one would have been mad at you for that. And then there was all these, like, weird things happening. And then you meet him, and he's, like, this broody, like, little motherfucker who's like, I don't really want to be here. And, like, Dad really fucked up once, and like now I'm dealing with all this shit. And it's like, dude, just get over yourself. And he's like, don't leave the house. Did you bleed on any trees? And then proceeds to not fucking explain that to her at all. And like, you just know she's gonna do some dumb shit in like a couple of pages. I mean, she bleeds everywhere again. And it's just like, Oh,
But that was the thing, right? That was the thing that bothered me. Was I was like, I know why the publishers have said this is gothic. Is because blood is mentioned. Like, if you were to play a drinking game and to drink every single time blood is mentioned, you would be shit faced by chapter 7. Like, it's so ridiculous how often it's mentioned, and it's just not mentioned in a scary way or sinister way at all. And it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And not only that, his house where he's been alone for hundreds of years is full of people. He's got
full of people. It's all his servants. It's all his servants who don't want anything to do with him because he's an asshole.
They're not even his servants, right? They're just straight up villagers. Like, they're not even doing anything. Like, why are they there? What purpose do they serve other than to explain things to the main character when he's being ambiguous? Now, I will say one thing. I so very nearly ordered the second book because I'll tell you for why. Because as the book progresses, and this is a bit that Lizzie did not get to, the twin sister, whilst all this is happening with drama pants in the woods, the other sister is essentially a necromancer that she doesn't realize is a necromancer, who is attached to the woods and is using her magic to fuel the woods. And she thinks she's doing a good thing by killing off the woods because she thinks that by killing the woods, she's going to bring her sister back. So she thinks what she's doing is right, when actually what's killing the woods is demons underneath it. And that is what the woods are there for. That is why the sister has gone to the wolf. That's what she's fueling. So they're actually fighting against each other without realizing. Once again, I'm making it sound way more interesting than it is. But the final bit basically turns the sister for the throne into Snow White, and she's left in this glass casket because they are literally draining the magic out of her. And I was like, I am so tempted to read the next book because it was such a villain origin story, and I just don't find them enough that I was like, maybe. And then I was like, but I've been fooled once, shame on me. Like, do you know what I mean? I was like, I can't. So I haven't. I won't be reading the second book, but I was so close because honestly, if someone in the comments could recommend me more villain origin stories, I need them in my life.
Well, if anyone in the chat has actual Little Red Riding Hood retellings, that would also be helpful.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the red cloak. The red cloak.
Yeah.
Is supposed to signify the sacrifice, isn't it?
Well, I think the red cloak was just meant to be kind of like, it's like a marriage cloak, which is like a real thing in like a lot of European mythology. So they would get like a really nice cloak.
But she wears, all the colours she wears signify something. Because I was like, why do I care? None of this is going to matter. And then they go on to the other sister who's wearing like pure white. And I'm like, I don't care.
How did you sound more like Donald Trump then than you have in your entire life?
I don't know.
Wait.
So I decided that I wasn't going to put myself through this. And instead I'm going to talk about a book I have already read. And I read last year. Because it's actually a good book. And I could talk about any of this author's books, to be honest. And it would fit this prompt. But this one was apt. This one was apt because it is a green cover. So I'm going to talk about Lost Boy by Christina Henry. And this is a Peter Pan retelling. It's dark, it's twisty, it's gruesome. Lots of content warnings for, child endangerment, violence against children. It's Peter Pan, but it's not Peter Pan as you know him. Or you do if you're really clever and can read through the subtext of how much of a terrible person Peter Pan was. But there's also a really interesting Captain Hook storyline in this too. And the kind of how Captain Hook came to be and why he fucking hates Peter Pan as much as he fucking does. It's all kind of explained in this. But Christina Henry does really well with her fairy tale retellings, and that's why I shriveled up a little bit inside when Hannah said that she disliked fairy tale retellings, because Christina Henry does it best.
I have not read Christina Henry yet. I've got some on my shelf that I need to read, and I'm planning to this year, but I haven't read them yet.
Weirdly, last year, this was my top book of 2021. This beat out literally every other book that I read in 2021, and that was 125 books, 150. I read a lot last year, but it beat out a lot. I don't remember. Shut up, Hannah, as if you fucking could.
I think it was like 125, 150.
I can't remember, but my point I was making is a fairy tale retelling of Peter Pan beat out hell of a lot of the other books. I read Brandon Sanderson for the first time last year. You know, I read all the Skullduggeries, which are amazing. I reread like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and this beat out all of them. So what I'm saying is, it's impressive. It's not the best Christina Henry book though. That honor goes to Horseman, which is a Sleepy Hollow retelling, and also fantastic. But I think this one got such a high rating because I like Peter Pan anyway. But what Christina Henry does is she takes what's already in the text and twists it into the darkest way she can. So when you think about Peter Pan, you think, oh, he's a child that never grows up. But he also abducts children. And then he forces them not to grow up. And then you think, why are there grown-ups in Neverland? This tells you. And also, they
talk a dramatic pause. I was like, I really thought you were going to come in quicker than that, and I was like, I'll wait.
They also talk about the Native American tribes, and that's dark and twisty. They talk about Tinkerbell, and that's again, content warnings are there for a reason, people. But if you don't really have many like triggers or stuff, or you read them and you think you can handle it, like, I don't really recommend these for everyone. I wish I could, because I honestly think she's a genius. Other than the last time I talked about Christina Henry and was very upset by her. By another one of her retellings, Avoid the Mermaid, okay? We can go back and rewatch that live show on Danny's channel, but there's a reason. This one it's just so well written because it's so recognizably Peter Pan. But it's just dark.
So Ali said, I finally read a Christina Henry, but it was The Girl in Red and it was okay. But I definitely want to pick up more from her. I think I would like her other ones.
The Girl in Red is loosely based on Little Red Riding Hood. It's not a page for page a Little Red Riding Hood retelling. It's a girl who is in a pandemic world that has fallen to pieces, and she has an amputated leg. So it's a disabled main character, and basically her entire family gets brutally murdered by all the cults that have, popped up, and it's her basically fighting her way through the woods as, this capable young woman who happens to have just a prosthetic leg, and she does it with like an axe and a gun, and like it's just her journey to like a safe place. So it's, again, I read it during the pandemic. And it was great. And I really enjoyed how capable this main character was. And her disability wasn't really mentioned other than the fact that she had it. And it wasn't like, I just kind of enjoyed how strong and like, yeah, people always underestimate me because they don't think I can look after myself. And that is never more true is when she's faced with a group of men and she's just got an axe and is like, you want it? You want to try? So,
you want to try?
Yeah, I think it's not where I would have started with Christina Henry, but I'm okay with that. You start with that one. I would have started with The Mermaid because then every time it's up. The only way is up from there,
I feel like you going, or that character going, I have an axe, wanna try? I feel like that's just Lizzie energy.
Yeah, for sure.
My mum didn't like The Girl in Red because it was too violent. My mother also liked Alice and Red Queen because they're Alice in Wonderland retellings, and my mum knows Alice in Wonderland more like over like Little Red Riding Hood. So I don't know, if you know a fairy tale more, you might enjoy those retellings. Although I don't know the book of Sleepy Hollow, but I love the film with Johnny Depp and all of that. I thought the film is fantastic, so that's why I like the book.
Yeah, the book's very, very different, and the book it's not really the same because it's basically a whole bunch of people pranking one guy and then he just disappears.
Yeah,
and it's I know. It's never really explained. It is explained if you're able to read between the lines, like you said earlier, but it's not the same. I would absolutely recommend the film over the book any day of the week.
Which is interesting because Horseman goes into that. And I know it's very different, but I had no interest in reading the book because I don't tend to like classics. So yeah. I was happy and content with just watching the film, and I got a lot of enjoyment out of the retelling. So
yeah, would not recommend Sleepy Hollow the TV series. It's trash. So
as most of them are. Anyway, I think I have been angry and Christina Henry fangirling for enough time. Hannah, do you want to talk about yours?
No, I want to go back to Hannah's comment of either Cersei Ruin Song or Soul of Stone to be the favourite retellings. They're very, very different. Do you want to talk us through them?
I can try. It's been a while.
I can help you two of them. I haven't read Soul of Stone.
So Soul of Stone, I'll start with that one then. So it's quite small, and it's by Michelle. Hang on, I've got it up still. I think it's Amit Rani. Yeah, Michelle Amit Rani. I'm probably saying that wrong. I'm terrible with pronunciations at the best of times. So it's a retelling of Medusa, and you find her living in a cave. She's kind of ostracized, and someone, I can't remember exactly if they're sent there or just stumble on the cave, but they find Medusa, and you kind of see this like whole other side to her, and she's not like the evil Gorgon. Like she's just, people just don't like her because she's different, but she's actually like a really powerful healer, and she does her best to like help out when she can with like villages and things like that go on, and that's how she like kind of gets by as well, as the villagers kind of turn to her as like a last resort to help, but like she always like kind of pulls through. It was just, I really enjoyed it. Like it was kind of like a breath of fresh air on what I'd read about Medusa in the past, because like she's always the villain sort of thing, so it was good to see her as not the villain. He's done a few others as well, based on some of the Greek myths, and I've enjoyed those as well, but I've forgotten what one was. The Mists of Avalon, and Bringer of Fire might have been the other one, which is about I'm going to say it wrong now. I can't even say it. Hephaestus. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And I really enjoyed them, and I really hope he does more. And then Ruin Song is based on Phantom of the Opera. Loved that, because Phantom of the Opera is one of my favourite classics. Like I was obsessed with the film growing up as well. By the film, I mean the musical, because like, yeah, it's the musical. So yeah, this is last October, so let's see how much I can remember. But Hannah had already really recommended it to me. So I went in with high expectations, and it met them. It fulfilled them. Yay. So that's good, because hype tends to make me hate books. So it's good going. But yeah, it follows a woman rather than a man, doesn't it?
It does.
And music's still like really heavily featured. Like it does have quite a lot of the original to it, but it is different. And I can't remember if they follow the same format as the original, because the original has like newspaper articles and stuff. Was it kind of a bit like that?
No, it isn't. So it's split perspective, split personality then, split perspective, and essentially you have the main character whose name is essentially something to do with music that begins with C, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it is.
Yeah, I can't remember it. It's behind me.
And I want to call her Clementine. That's not her name, but it's something very similar to that.
Did I write a review? Hang on.
Anyway, so essentially, oh, thank you. Yeah, come on, tell me who they are.
Wait, Cadence.
That's it. I was close. Okay, so Cadence.
I thought it was on my top shelf, and I was like, "Am I going to stand on my chair?" I was like, "No," but I went, "Oh no, we moved it there."
So Cadence can basically use magic to affect other people, and a lot of people can sing and use magic in the same way. So all magic is kind of like related to how you, in the same way that you would say a spell, they have to sing a spell. And Cadence is the most powerful singer in the whole kingdom. And basically she is used as a weapon against the people. And the other main character, again, whose name escapes me, knew Cadence as a child and is basically a rebel against the crown. So they basically become enemies. And they're forced basically to spend more time together as enemies. And they kind of like fight against the evil queen, because of course there's an evil queen. And the mask bit is used more as like an intimidation tactic. So whilst it is heavily influenced by Phantom of the Opera, it is not a beat for beat retelling, but it is incredibly sapphic. It's YA, so it moves very, very quickly. It is incredibly dark. And that is the one thing that like I loved about it. But when it comes to like recommending it to people, I was like, oh, it's kind of morally grey. And then my friend Sean was like, Hannah, she tortures a kid in chapter 1. That's dark. That's not morally grey. And I was like, all right, I have lower standards for violence than you do, obviously. That's fine. So just bear in mind, in the same way that Lizzie said about finding triggers, like make sure that you read up on those because it can be super, super dark. But like I said, it moves really, really quickly. And the one thing that I would definitely say sells it is a standalone. So it's not going to bait and switch you at the end where other fantasies do. It does, however, rush like the last 3 chapters. It's basically like, and then this happens because it's just like ending the narrative. But I really liked their story. I really liked some of the really powerful moments in it. And I have to be really careful not to spoil it because I just want more people to read it and love it. So
I still haven't, and it's on my, I really want to read it.
Out of the 3 of us here, the 2 people who you have recommended it to have enjoyed it. So you know the people you can recommend it to, because I also really enjoyed this. And I really appreciated one of the male characters in this a lot that you will meet with the way he reacts about LGBTQ+, because as Hannah said, it's sapphic. And you know how men in fantasy usually react to anything gay. It was just very refreshing for a male character to be like, oh, chill. That's a good massive plus to this. And yeah, for sure it is very violent, but I also love that, and also she's a badass, and I loved everything. So
yeah. Oh, and plus size main character as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just casually.
That definitely makes me want to read it. Like, I've wanted to read it for a bit, but I'm gonna see if I can add it to like a TBR soonish.
I think you should. It's a good time. And like I said, it moves really quickly, so it's not a difficult read. And if you're in a reading slump, I would recommend it because it just moves so goddamn quick that you pick it up and you're done. Like, I read it in a couple of days, and we all know I'm a hella slow reader, so.
It's not that you're a slow... Like, when you first said I'm a slow reader, I was like, but you read, like, the same speed as I do. But, like, because you start so many books at the same time...
Danny, that was a pointed comment. Danny, that was a pointed comment, I think.
No, I don't think it was. No, I don't think it was. I think you're absolutely right. I thought you were going to go in a different direction and be like, Hannah, you would finish more books if you stopped distracting yourself, which would also be true. The fact is, I'm not a slow reader. I just distract myself and I pick up about 8 books at once. I started another 2 yesterday. You know,
that's the thing. Like, you're not
yet, that's too embarrassing, but I have.
When you said slow reader, I thought, oh, it just like you read slowly. In fact, you don't read slowly. Yeah. You just start too many things. But
look,
I mean,
I'm lying to myself. Okay, you're allowed to lie to yourself about your lactose thing. I'm allowed to lie to myself about this.
Wait, are you back on 9 books?
Let's go back to this comment by Ali. I may need to replace my copy and might have gotten it soaked in soda and a child disaster moment along with other books about a month ago. Right. We'll fix that. And then, Hannah, the last one you've got on your list is Cersei.
Yes. So it is a very slow read. I know a lot of people hated it because of it being so slow, but one of my favourite books is The Name of the Wind, which is also really slow. So that's not an issue with me. If anything, it seems like apparently I like slow books more. So was good. It follows Cersei like from, it's not really birth, is it? But like from like her being in the palace, and like, yeah, like it's like kind of, it follows her whole life, it feels like, even though it's not, you know, birth. She's a god. Well, a nymph, isn't she? I think. Or a naiad. I can't remember which one it is. One of them.
She's a witch, basically. Like, she basically describes herself as like the first of her kind because she compares herself to like demigods, gods, and nymphs, and she's like, I'm not really like any of these. Like, I just was just there.
Well, she started off as a god, didn't she? She started off as a goddess, and then that was the whole point, wasn't it? That she was the first of her kind.
I can't remember
not
100% what it was that she was, but yeah, she was a goddess, and she becomes the first witch. Isn't that right? I think, yeah. And it like follows her through like her exile to a remote desert, well, not really desert, but like a remote island out in the middle of nowhere sort of thing, and like how she meets Odysseus, and like the trajectory of all that, because that takes a very long time in the book, but I suppose it's probably like one of the main points on her remote deserted island. I've quickly had a glance over what I wrote for a review, and so at the ending she kind of finally gets like her happy ending, because it's not a happy book, like her being exiled is definitely probably a clue to it not being a happy book. But like the ending, I wanted more of that time that she has. But yeah, I still very much enjoyed it. And I wasn't overly familiar with her like going into it either. I kind of just knew glancing bits.
Yeah, I was
So,
the
yeah.
same. But I would also say the one thing that I wish people had said before I went in is that there are trigger warnings for sexual assault in this. Because for me, I know that there is really brutal sexual assault in a lot of Greek myth and history, but seeing it from her perspective, because it's one of the few female perspectives in Greek myth that I had read to that point. I've read a lot more since, though, thanks to Natalie Haynes. I was really not ready for the way that she reacts to being treated that way. And obviously she gets her own back, but it's just the way that whole scene is described is kind of brutal. So I would bear that in mind. But if people enjoy Cersei, I would recommend Hamnet, the way that's written, because again, it's the female perspective through a long period of time. And I feel like they're both just really powerful and yet put upon women that just haven't really had their stories told till this point. And whilst the history is very different because it's a Shakespearean rather than Greek history, I think if you like one and you like the writing style of one, you will probably like the other.
That's why it's on my bookshelf somewhere. I think it's that one.
You've worried me.
There, that one. I think it's that one.
You've worried me now, Hannah.
Why?
Because I didn't enjoy Cersei, and I just want to pop this in here because I do know the Cersei myth quite well. And I was really fucking excited when we weren't on the desert island, on the deserted island in the middle of nowhere. I was like, ooh, juicy. And then it was like 70 pages of fucking chaos during that whole thing. And then we got to the bit I knew, and I was like, I don't think I can sit through this. I already know this. And so I was like, what else is going to happen? Because it was chaos. And I was like, the brakes are going on. I can feel it. And it might not have been the right time, but I just didn't like that everything I didn't know was crammed into just 70 pages. Whereas I feel like that whole part of her story, like how she falls from grace, essentially, and what she does in this kind of spur of the moment, thinking she's doing the right thing, you know, trying to find true love or whatever. And all of that was super interesting. And I wanted more of that rather than the deserted island meeting Odysseus shit, because we already know that. Although, from Odysseus' point of view, really, there's not much from Cersei's point of view. And I think it's really interesting to see it from like a villain character, because essentially she's Odysseus's villain, one of Odysseus's villains, right? And she's like the temptress, as we said, the first witch. So I think it is worth reading, but it just, for me, knowing the myth, just be aware the stuff you don't know will happen real quick, and then it will just go into more familiar territory if you know the beat for beat myths. So just as a side, just be aware of that going in, and you'll get a lot more enjoyment than I did, because I was sold a different kind of book.
I didn't love it. I think I finished it because I forced myself to finish it. It was in a period of time that I was like, I don't DNF stuff. Now I DNF stuff left, right, and centre, but I didn't at the time. And I really wanted to like it, and I think I read it maybe at the wrong time because the hype was really high when I read it. But I had the same issue Lizzie had. I was like, I wanted more about what I didn't know. But I had the same issue with Song of Achilles, which is also Madeline Miller. And then I realised it might just be her writing style. It's like, maybe it's just that doesn't work for me. But then I read Galatea, and I did like that, but that's a short story.
That's only like 5 pages long. You haven't got a lot to like lose your will with. If you don't like someone's writing style, only reading 5 pages of it will help you.
I mean, it's 52, but the pages are about this big. So I think it accumulates to about like 7.
5 pages, yeah.
If they were a normal page book, it would be like 10 pages most, like max, for sure.
And that's with the acknowledgement and the dedication.
Yeah, exactly. It's tiny. This is the biggest joke of a book, and I still think it's ridiculously priced, and it should not be £8.
It's $7.99.
Yeah, who fucking thought that was okay? That should be like £4.99. Like, let's be honest.
Even.
Well, no, I think £4.99 is general norm. That's pretty
it's
normal.
less than a £5, so I'd pay that. But like $7.99 is a bit silly, I think. Anyway, does anyone have any questions about Hannah or Lizzie's retellings before I basically just spend the next 3 hours telling you how amazing The Beautiful Ones is?
Oh god, here we go.
So this is not a retelling, but it is a green
Go
cover.
on, put some seatbelts on, get a drink, get a snack. We're gonna be
Get a snack. Hannah's like, I'm off. Okay, basically, story time. I read Mexican Gothic for Gothtober last year and immediately loved it. Like, immediately loved it, and went out and bought every other book that I could get my hands on. So this one, Velvet Was the Night, Certain Dark Things, and Gods of Jade and Shadow. There are 2 other collections of short stories I could not get my hands on, but give me time. And she's got The Daughter of Dr. Moreau coming out this year as well. Very, very excited. Yeah, it really did take me forever to read it. I have TBR'd this nearly 4 times. I TBR'd it twice last year and twice this year. But the difference with this year is I have made a promise to myself that if I put something in my TBR 3 times and then don't read it, I have to unhaul it. Because clearly I'm just not as excited about it as I thought I was. And this one I had TBR'd twice. So I was like, I don't have a choice. Because if I TBR it again and don't pick it up, I'm going to have to unhaul it. And then my collection is incomplete. And that was basically the only reason I put it on my TBR. And what a fool I was. I should have got to it sooner. It's so fucking good. So basically, this is a historical romance. And I know Lizzie's immediately going to stop paying attention after this because I don't think I could think of anything worse for her to read. But I fucking loved it. So this is a historical romance where essentially it is a love triangle. Again, would lose Lizzie at this point if it hadn't already. Between a young girl called Nina, her cousin's wife, Valerie, and this telekinesis performer called Hector. And basically, Hector and Valerie, 10 years ago, had a whirlwind romance. They desperately fell in love with each other. Everything was passion. Everything was beautiful. However, Hector had no money. He came from nothing. And Valerie, whilst having a very aristocratic name and family, also had nothing. So whilst they were engaged in secret. Hector went off to make his fortune. Valerie was forced to marry someone else. So then 10 years later, we reach the start of the book where Hector has returned hoping to meet Valerie and hoping that he can whisk her away. Except Valerie now has a very nice, comfortable life with her rich husband, and she has been looking after her husband's cousin, Antonina or Nina, who is very obsessed. This is her. She's very pretty, but she is not a lady. She likes spending her time outside. She likes collecting insects, and she's just a bit of a wild child. And Hector decides that when Valerie basically says she's not interested in him, that he is going to pursue Nina because Nina and Valerie are in the same house, and he knows that if he spends time with Nina, he will have to also spend time with Valerie, and thus Valerie will be forced to spend time with him. And that is all the plot I'm going to tell you because it gets real wild real quick. And I'm not gonna lie, the entire time I was reading this, I knew something was going to go wrong. It is so tense and so beautifully written that the whole time I was there on the edge of my seat, just like, I don't know what's going to happen or when. I was like, this is going to be Nina's villain origin story. You know, telekinesis is involved. Is she going to have like a Magneto from X-Men mode where she just makes everything explode? Like all of that drama, like I was just excited for it. And the whole time Nina is falling more in love with Hector, and Hector likes Nina. It's not even that he's not interested in her at all. So there's like all of this stuff going on. And then my favorite character, who I will kind of like, my favorite character in this entire thing is a young aristocratic gentleman called Etienne. And Etienne is Hector's best friend. And all Etienne wants is an easy life. He just wants to chill the fuck out. He wants to go to the pub and have a drink. And like his little brother then starts like pursuing one of the women that like Hector's like talking to. And Etienne is just like, why though? Like, you've got money, you've got a name, you could marry anyone. Why are you pursuing this person? Like, just, you're making my life more complicated. And then Hector's over there being angsty, and Valerie's over there being a bitch, and Etienne's just like, can we just hang out? Like, and I just, the whole time, all of his little quips are just so funny, and he is so put upon. And then like he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm married now. And Hector's like, oh, when? He's like, oh, don't know, don't care. Like, it's just, that's just like his whole vibe. And he tickled me. He was the comic relief without him being like ha funny. Like, he was just like the moments of levity. And I just thought that was so well done. I loved it. It got 5 stars. Everyone needs to read it. Like, I literally, for the sub boxes that I've been recommending this month, I have recommended it to everybody that gets recommendations. Like, everybody.
Not me.
Well, no, not you, because as I said, it's a historical romance love triangle. The only thing you'd be interested in is telekinesis. And the only way this will ever be on your TBR is if you get one of those prompts where your flatmate has to choose your prompt again, in which case...
What, this one?
Yeah.
I have a question for you though. Do you like it over Mexican Gothic? Because I love Mexican Gothic, and I think that's going to be hard for Silvia Moreno Garcia to beat for me personally.
They're so different. They're both Gothic, but they are so different. This, I'm trying to think like comparatively. Jane Eyre is way too depressing, but this is like, in the way that Jane Eyre is a romantic Gothic, this is romantic Gothic, whereas Mexican Gothic is more like Frankenstein and Jekyll and Hyde style Gothic, right? Which is more what I would recommend to you. I would lean into the horror spook, creepy house, creepy family, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. That is more Mexican Gothic. This is not that at all. There is, like I said, there's telekinesis in it, but there are no moments where you're like, but is it psychological or supernatural? I don't know. Like, she's treated like shit by some people who think she's a witch. That's about it. She's treated so well. Her family love her. They respect her. They worry about her, but they want her to be happy. There's no like, she's not shunned for who she is. And I like that she is, whilst not a plus size character, she is kind of almost like neurodivergent, and kind of like, she's just different enough that she's probably relatable to a lot of people, which I really appreciated. Whilst Valerie is very much the stick thin blonde that doesn't know how to experience joy. So it was just, I loved it. I think you'd hate it, but I loved it. So
can you tell which one was written first? With a lot of authors, when you read their like backlist, you can tell how they've grown as authors. And I would say the most comparable one I can think of is V. Schwab. I think you can see her writing journey through her books. And I don't know if that's just because V. Schwab is so prolific, but I'd like to see how you find, because you've got all of Silvia Moreno Garcia's, how she has
well, I don't know, because I know that she read the short stories first, and then she did Gods of Jade and Shadow. That was like her debut novel, so that was even before Mexican Gothic, and I haven't read that one yet. I would say Mexican Gothic, she's very much leaning into tropes and selling a Gothic novel. This one, it just felt like she was having a great time. Like, she's using all the language. It's all kind of like very French, but very nondescript kind of thing. Like, I looked up the places, and the places did exist. They were places in France, but they were not, as far as I'm aware, they were not how she describes them. She's basically describing like the Bath version of France, like where it's like a city that has all these different things, but it's not London. It's not Paris. Do you know what I mean? Does that make any sense? I don't know. But
that's cool. I'd never read it, but it sounds
amazing. This, and I'm really excited because obviously, like, Certain Dark Things is a very, very different writing style to this, because I've read the first 3 chapters, and it's a lot more modern because it's set in like the 80s, 90s, whereas
I think it's set in like the 2000s. I've just finished it. Yeah.
So it's like, but it's that kind of like, I guess for me, it was the grunge vibe in like the descriptions of all their clothes and stuff is what made me think it was like 80s, 90s, but it gives me like all vibes.
It's the cover with the neon lights on it and like the hell on it. That's what drew me to it. Is the cover looks amazing.
Yeah, like the 80s
cover looks
kind of
sick. Yeah.
Yeah. The 80s kind of really like pulls into it, but it's talked about as like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think it's 2000s.
And then the Velvet Was the Night, I think, is the 70s. But again, I think it's going to be completely different. And what I have to say is, like, Silvia Moreno Garcia has a specific writing style, but she is a chameleon, because depending on what she wants to write will change the vibe. And I feel like The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, which is coming out in September, I think, just in time for Gothtober, will be more like Mexican Gothic than this and Velvet Was the Night.
I'm so excited for the Dr. Moreau, because you don't get Dr. Moreau retellings ever. So I'm like very excited.
I mean, like, there are loads of H.G. Wells books that probably do deserve retellings, and actually we could do with having a woman of color retell them, to be honest. Like,
Okay, another case in point of me not knowing I'm walking into a retelling because I didn't know it was a retelling.
what,
The-
Dr. Moreau?
Yeah, never heard of it.
That's why I was asking, I guess, about if it's if you can tell like the writing style and like if she's changed as an author, because there are certain books of hers that I really do want to read, and Certain Dark Things is one, and the Daughter of Dr. Moreau is the other one. Those are the ones that call to me, but I also want to read like Gods of Jade and Shadow.
Yeah.
And because this is the second book you've read and loved by her, I just was wondering, as someone who isn't interested in reading all of them, because I don't think I'll read Velvet is the Night, and I don't think I'll read the beautiful ones, but all the other ones that I've looked at, gone, oh, yeah, those look good. And I kind of wanted to know if the writing style is still there, but she can kind of twist it to work in whatever way she wants. And if the second one, if she has managed to do that, then that gives me kind of that interests me more, because that's clever.
To be fair, it's one of those things where if you were like, say you were reading a readathon and it says something, it has to have like romantic elements or something like that in it, and you're like, but I don't like romance, right? I would recommend it, because if you like historical, if you like telekinesis, if you like something, if you just like her writing style, I feel like that would be enough to get you past all of that. But this, to me, has it's basically like a telenovela but classy. Like, it is dramatic, like everything about it is so dramatic. Like, there's these two aunts that just kind of like leave her to get on with whatever, and like everyone's like, ooh, scandal, because she went home with someone, and it's like, you just walked her home, like it's really not that big a deal, but it becomes this massive thing, and it's just class and like decadence, and it's just, I loved it. Yeah, but it's one of those things where I think I will pick up Velvet Was the Night next, because I think I'm going to like that one less than Certain Dark Things. And I don't think I will be too mad if I like it less than this one, because I love this one on par with Mexican Gothic. So I feel like there needs to be one that's not as good as the others. Otherwise, I'm just going to love all of them. She is an author by author, though. That any book of hers that came out, she could write a newspaper article and I'd be there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'll have her shopping list if that's going. Everything she writes down, I want it.
I'm very disappointed that you haven't read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and stick with me here. Just stick with me here for a sec, because I enjoyed Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and there's lots of romance plot lines in her Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So I don't necessarily say I can't. It puts me off from a book, but I was shocked by Seven Husbands. So I don't know if I would necessarily hate Beautiful Ones. It's the love triangle thing that is almost worse.
For me, like, okay, so for clarification for those watching, for Out of Comfort Zone, I put on Twitter what potential books that were out of my comfort zone that people might want me to read, and a couple of them I've got like that I own, but I didn't own one of them, and that was Seven Husbands, because I thought Danny owned it, but apparently Danny owns every other Taylor Jenkins Reid book, but not Seven Husbands.
Nope.
And I came across it twice, once when I was putting an order in for some clients, and the other when we were in Toppings on Monday, and I didn't buy it either time because I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I have no interest in reading it, and because every time what people sell it to me as is, oh well, it's like a celebrity like mystery with like romance, and I don't care. The moment you mention celebrity, I've switched off. Shit, there is nothing about that book or the description or the synopsis that interests me, and I don't want to keep reading books that I know I'm not going to like just because people like them, because all I'm going to do is go, hey, that book that you love, I think it's shit, and that's not a nice conversation to have. If we both don't like it, or if I've done it by accident where I've picked it up and I've expected to like it and I haven't, that's very different. I don't mind having those conversations, but I'm not going to willfully pick up a book that I think I'm not going to like. So I was devastated when it was picked, and then I just actively avoided it all month. So. All
I mean though is that I wonder stylistically if it would be something that is kind of similar, because I get when you're calling it a telenovela but classy, Seven Husbands looked like a fucking Keeping Up with the Kardashians kind of thing, right? That's what I felt like I was reading, but like classier. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to try the Beautiful Ones, because I was so shocked at how much I enjoyed Seven Husbands. So I don't know. This is
How about
I
I read Beautiful Ones first and then let you know? Because I like both.
All three of you. I'd be happy for as many people to read it as possible.
I love how you're all like, maybe I should read it. Danny, yours and my reading tastes are nowhere close to one another's. And
that's the thing. If Danny comes back and says, oh my God, it's the greatest love story ever written, you'll be like, all right, thanks.
Bye.
But what I mean is I've read Seven Husbands, so I can compare it to Seven Husbands. because I used to have a physical copy. I think it's at my dad's somewhere, but otherwise, like I've read Seven Husbands, so I can compare it to that. I can let you know if it's similar, if it has similar vibes, and then you can decide, do I want to read it or not?
You'll
Or you can
probably-
just try it and do the Hannah
that.
thing where you read 3 chapters and then DNF.
I love doing that. I love doing that. Just giving something 3 chapters, because I think you can tell by 3 chapters what their writing style is going to be. And even if you can't guess the ending, you know by that point if you're going to stick it out or not.
Hannah,
So-
I'd like to show you a book that actively challenges your 3-chapter thing, and it's a book you recommended to me. The 3rd chapter is like the 6th page. Hannah,
Yeah, but I loved it by the 3rd chapter, so that wasn't a problem for me.
I was reading it and I was like, Hannah, you're lucky I didn't give this only 3 chapters because it wouldn't have done well. Like, it's fine, but it was so short, it threw me through a loop. I was like,
I love short chapters though. I love it. Like, so at the moment, for the Lunar Book Club book, we're reading The Shadow in the Glass, and the 1st chapter is 65 pages long. That's painful, because when you're like, oh, it's like 10 o'clock at night, but it's fine, I'm going to get to the end of the chapter, and you're on page 24 and you've got another 40 pages to go, that's painful. Give me a 3-page chapter any day. Hated it. Just a chapter length. I'm actually quite enjoying the story, because that is a Dr. Faustus meets Cinderella retelling, which is kind of wild. So okay, whilst we're on the topic, then I will talk about the books that I read that were out of my comfort zone. So like I said, I didn't read the one that I put in the poll, and I will probably never read a Taylor Jenkins read. I will not apologize for that. It is what it is.
I'm very upset because I wanted to see Hannah suffer through it, or like at least give it a chance and really hate herself when she enjoyed it. And I was just hoping that was going to happen, and then it never happened. So now that chance has gone.
Why would I hate myself for enjoying something?
I don't know. It feels like something you'd be like, okay, I would be like,
no, it's just you. You're the one. Okay, again, for context, Lizzie read the romance that I wrote, and the first thing she said when I saw her was, I have a bone to pick with you. And I was like, already, this is interesting. Like, what have I done wrong? And Lizzie was like, I don't like romance, but I enjoyed this. And she was mad about it. And I feel like it's because Lizzie went in fully expecting to just like it because she's my friend, not like it because it's actually good.
If I may try and convince you one more time to try Seven Husbands, it's on Scribd as an audiobook.
It wasn't when I was looking the other day, so that's why I didn't do it. And I probably won't.
It's on a throne of lies.
Sit on the throne of lies. Okay, I read They're Trying to Break Your Heart. This is an arc that I won through Goodreads, but actually it is written by David Saville, who is one of my lecturers. And originally I wanted to read this because I wanted to see, like, did I learn anything from this? Who's tapping? Who's tapping?
Sorry.
Is that you, Hannah? Stop
I was
tapping.
filling the spreadsheet.
Sorry, it just really tickled me because I could see that like Lizzie and Danny were muted, and then just the tapping. Really enjoyed it. Normally, I enjoy clickety clacks, but I can barely hold a sentence together as it is. So basically, this is a historical fiction, but it's not necessarily like super historical. It's Bosnian War level history, which is not far enough in the past for my liking. And basically, it has a fractured structure. You're following 3 people. You have Anya, who is a journalist who actively helps people get compensation from like The Hague, basically. So say, for example, your family was part of a massacre. She would go to The Hague on your behalf to get you money from whichever cult, company or country it was that like destroyed your home, right? So she does that. She's very much an angry activist. You have William, who is her boyfriend, and you have Marco, who was a Bosnian soldier during that conflict. And what Marco discovers is that the person that Anya has been chasing was his best friend, and his best friend committed war crimes. And throughout this book, you find out that Marco and Anya are kind of uncovering what this guy did, seemingly at the same time, except they're 5 years apart, because Anya finds out 5 years later and then dies during the tsunami that hits Bangkok on Christmas Eve. So this has tsunami and war criminals and a whole bunch of things, and it is incredibly poignant and it is incredibly sad. I struggled so much rereading this, because the first time I read it with the hype of, one, I had just won it, two, it's my lecturer and I massively respect him, and three, I think I was teaching at the time anyway, so it was just to read something outside of my comfort zone at the time that wasn't, I didn't have to teach this, so I moved through it very quickly, and I don't think I let it hit me the way it hit me this time. Trying to read about the Bosnian conflict whilst the conflict in Ukraine is currently happening was wild, and seeing the grief of all these different people, because this is a story of humanity, it was just really tough. And I was doing it as an audiobook as well, and just the whole reread of it was really, really tricky. And I'll be honest, I stopped about halfway through because I knew I'd be able to wrap it up regardless of not actually finishing my reread. And I would recommend it to people, but not right now. Not right now. And it's kind of the same reaction. I've got some other books here that are also out of my comfort zone, but for very different reasons. But one of them is called Rabbit Girls, which again, I won in a competition and is signed by the author because she was on the same course as me for my master's. So these are both, I went to writing school books, which is quite funny. And they're also both about war, because this one is set during the Second World War. And the Rabbit Girls were women who worked in concentration camps in Germany, smuggling notes out of the concentration camps to families outside of. So if you were someone of Jewish descent that happened to be in the concentration camp, you could get notes out through these women. They would sew them into uniforms and get them out that way. And basically it's set in the 80s, where this woman finds out that her father was married to one of these rabbit girls and the horrible things that happened to her. And it's based at, I think it's Rookshaven is the one where it is, which is Ravensbrück, which is basically where, and this is brutal, so heads up, where they basically did forced hysterectomies and would do experiments on these women and all kinds of really fucking brutal stuff, and it's all
was this where Mengele was based, where there's a particular doctor who was very much it's focusing on twins and all of that, and I don't remember his first name. I know his last name was Mengele.
Quite possibly. So the characters in this aren't real, so I don't know if the antagonists in this are based on that. And that is something that I will say for both of these, is both of these are based on real events, but they use fictional people. And this one, the main story happens in a place called Stovnik, which is not real. And what I really appreciated is in the author's notes, that he basically explains that whilst these things are really important, he actively avoided correcting the geography. There are things in this that are wrong intentionally because it was suitable for the story, but not, he didn't want it necessarily to be tied to specific Bosnians, because he didn't want their history to be convoluted with his fictional one, which I thought was really important. I haven't even read the author's note of this one because it was just ages ago that I read this. But so both of those are war novels. They're probably the only two, except for maybe Sharp novels, that I've read that are anything to do with war. War is so out of my comfort zone. I just have no interest in reading it. And the only time I will ever kind of pick up a war book is if it's in fantasy, high fantasy, and dragons are involved. Fine. But I really struggle with high political fantasies as well. And it's why I tend to avoid, and I've noticed this more recently, avoid adult high fantasy, because adult high fantasy does really lean into the political meanderings of a whole country, whereas YA, it's but it's good, fights evil, and kind of all that kind of shit. You can enjoy a bad character in a YA rather than a standard one, but they are both brutal, and I remember crying at both of them when I first read them, so totally out of my comfort zone. But other books that I would more happily recommend on a general scale of out of your comfort zone vibe. The first one is a collection of short stories by Emma Cline called Daddy. Now, these are all, obviously Emma Cline is female presenting. She has written another book called The Girls, and all of her stories explore misogyny in different forms. Some are internalized misogyny, some are straight up misogyny. They are all super creepy, and there's always something sinister about them. and I just really like them. But if you're not a massive fan of short stories, they can be a bit jarring because they're all so different. But I really, really like this. This was recommended to me by Sean, who loves Emma Cline's The Girls, and like we picked this up together. Really enjoyed that. And then totally different again is Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows. Now I'm almost 100% sure that I have sent this to Hannah at some point in a Waypoint box. You may have this somewhere. This is a contemporary novel about a young woman who is basically like, she's just like hard on her luck. She lives above a pub. She's been working in this pub for like 5 years. She needs to do something else. And she sees at her local temple that they are looking for someone to teach creative writing lessons. And because she's got a university English degree, she's like, yeah, that's easy. And she rocks up expecting to teach them how to craft a better story. But actually these Punjabi women do not know how to read or write. They were never taught how to read or write. And basically they start telling these stories and they realize that the one thing they do all understand as wives is sex and how to kind of explore narrative through sex. And they start writing these erotic stories and it creates some kind of like controversy like amongst the temple. But it's a really light-hearted and poignant story. And I really, really enjoyed it because you've got this main character who really thinks she knows everything because she's a modern woman and she's like, you know, she doesn't wear a hijab and she doesn't wear a headscarf or anything like this. And her elders are just like, you're an idiot and you'll learn. And she does. And she kind of goes through all of her own prejudices as someone who is like a young person in that society. And in the meantime, you also have this murder story where a young girl has been killed recently, and it's kind of put together the pieces as to why that girl was killed, how it links to these women, the secrets they are keeping. And what I thought was really, really important is there is LGBT rep in this. There is one of the women who, whilst she's been married for 20 years, is a lesbian and has never been able to explore what that means for her being in an arranged marriage versus how she actually views sex. And I really, really enjoyed this story. I did this as an audiobook. This was gifted to me. And I would never, ever in a million years have picked this book up for myself. Wouldn't have happened. But I've recommended it to everyone since. I think it's great. So that's my monologue over. Shall we do a slightly different order? Lizzie, did you want to talk about your out of comfort zone one next?
Sure. So I didn't know what to read for this because I read over quite a broad. Well, I think I read over quite a broad load of genres. Those genres I actively avoid, but I don't think that counts as out of comfort zone. Like it does, but also I know I'm not, as Hannah said, sometimes I enjoy putting myself through, rereading Twilight because that's a whole different fucking vibe. But I also don't want to read a romance book that, people have loved and then slag it off in the internet. That isn't really helpful. Because everything I've kind of slagged off on the internet are books that I picked up assuming I'd like. So like The Mermaid by Christina Henry, I assumed I'd like that. And For the Wolf, I also thought I'd like it. So it's very different than like coming on here to recommend a book. I was like, I won't be able to recommend a romance unless I talk about Hannah's book. And then I thought that would be hella awkward because Hannah wrote it. And I didn't really want to put Hannah through that, even though it's fantastic and everyone should definitely pick up Bridesmaid Survival Guide from Waypoint Books. But I also knew that Hannah would be hella uncomfortable. So, I just thought I'd say that. So instead, I typically don't pick up thrillers for one of two reasons. One, I find them too predictable. And two, I just don't care. Like, I don't care about the characters at all. So I picked this book up for a cover buy. Because, look at it. Sorry. That's going to fucking catch my eye, isn't it? And I actually saw this on Bookish Gems channel. And it's totally her fault I bought it. And I've already told her that it's her fault that I bought this. It also has bright orange sprayed edges, which we love. Because books at the moment love orange, which I'm here for, as you can tell. But then I found out it was a thriller, and my first reaction was, oh, after I bought it, like after the fact, and it was too late. And then this prompt came up, and I was like, okay, you know what? This will fit the prompt because it's out of my comfort zone. This toes the line between horror and thriller. And Ali, you probably know more about thrillers than I do, to be honest, because I don't read them, as I've just said. So I highly enjoyed this because I read it more as a horror with thriller. Oh my god, my voice.
Elements.
Thriller elements to it. I gave it 4 stars. It's complicated, this plot, and it's kind of convoluted, and you kind of have to, you know, go along with it for a while. But it follows a mother and daughter, well, a family, and yeah, it's a mother and daughter relationship, and it's kind of explaining. Well, it completely throws you the entire time. You don't really know what's going on, but it's describing this mother's. Oh, I'm struggling. I'm sorry, guys. It's been a long weekend. Past her childhood and her growing up at their family ranch. Essentially, it's in the middle of the Mojave Desert. I really hope I pronounced that correctly. It's like in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and it describes like her weird ass family dynamic and how far removed she's tried to make it so that her daughters don't have to grow up in this same weird cult like family like facility. So her parents run a research facility on dog behavior after dogs being abused, and it's about like how dogs attack humans because it's like a trauma response, and they're doing all these experiments on them. It's really hard to give thoughts without spoilers, Ali. It really is, isn't it? Because it's really truly prolific what happens at the end. So I'm trying not to give it away, but I agree. I think there were some things I wanted explained further, but I liked the use of like the small little clues about how they got there. But the end threw me. They truly fucking threw me. The end, the entire end, and it was open ended as well, which I struggle with sometimes because I'm like, are you only doing that for the opportunity for a sequel, or is there a point to that? Are we supposed to be going, what the fuck did I just read? And I don't know, I really enjoyed what it was, and it threw me a bit because I didn't think I would enjoy it as much. Again, content warnings, it talks about, you know, animal abuse, child abuse, child abduction, a lot of violence towards kids and animals, scientific experiments, there's a lot, and also psychosis is involved in this, memory loss, trauma. Like it's a thriller, right? So there's going to be triggering things in there, but again, look after yourselves, content warning it up if you need to. But I did enjoy this, and because there was horror elements, like the first bit when I started reading it, it was about 9:30, so it was dark pretty much, and I was freaking out. Like, honest to God, I was freaking out because I don't do well with kids in horror stories at all. I hate them. I just can't deal with children in horror. And I made the mistake of like walking past my room. I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I was proper freaking because this kid was fucking creepy. Also, this is not a wolf on the cover, like I thought. It's a coyote, which makes sense being in the middle of the desert, and it's a very important plot point that it's a coyote. And there's just things that I found very amusing. There's also a subplot in here which is really clever. Now I know the ending, and the subplot is the mother basically writing a fictionalized, well, a fiction story about her childhood and about these characters in this book that she's writing, and her child knows about. So it's kind of written out of context, and it's kind of written in between certain chapters. And Sundial is just a really creepy place in the middle of nowhere. And I think I want to know what like proper thriller like enjoyers would think of this. So I'm glad it got 3.5 stars from Ali, because that makes me think I wasn't completely off with the way I felt about it. But I would be interested in what other people thought of this, because again, I'm not great with thrillers. Because then I read something else that was kind of thrillery. It was Dark Academia, and that was this, and I was highly disappointed in it. So, you know, this one won, this one failed. Didn't like this one. I called it from the beginning, and it was literally my first guess. Literally my first guess, and I got it. And I felt so disappointed when the reveal happened. And I was like, no, that was the one person I said I'd be disappointed if did it. I wish you love that book, Ali. I was disappointed. I'm allowed to feel disappointed by things, and I am.
I was literally, so like last night, Lizzie caught me as I was going upstairs and was like, oh, I have these theories and I have this theory and I have this theory. And I was like, mm-hmm. And then she was like, but if it's this person, I'll be really mad. And I was like, mm-hmm. Like, because I can't tell you how much I wanted to be like, okay, we'll put it down then, because you'll be mad. But I didn't want to like spoil that for you if you were like, well, actually, because you had so many other theories, I was like, well, maybe it will be enough to salvage it for you. And I didn't want to just straight up spoil it and be like, yeah, no, it is that person. Like straight up, it is that person. So yeah. I'm really sorry that I didn't, but I couldn't quite bring myself to do it.
I enjoyed this for vibes and Dark Academia kind of stuff, but I didn't enjoy the plot, and I hated the open ending on this. Loved this for horror and chilling moments, and I liked the open endingness of this story because it opens up to a whole load of other possibilities, and the entire time you're going, fuck, I missed all of that. And it isn't that it isn't there, because the more I think about it, the more you can pick up on it if you're looking for those clues. And like that for me is what kind of clinched it to a 4-star, because I was like, actually, I enjoyed this way more than I should have done.
Would you reread it again to see if you can find those clues again?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's just, I don't know, but then I quite like horror, and I quite like kind of like I like blood and guts and stuff. Like I'm not put off by any of that. And like it is quite violent in places, and it is quite graphic. Like some people, I mean, I don't know. I found there were bits that I was like, if I was grossed out by more stuff, this would be gross. Yeah, I would reread it to see if I picked up on it. Because again, I wasn't looking for the right things because I had a different idea of what was going on. So I think I would do. And I'm glad that Ali got it, because I think I just went along for the ride with this one, to be honest. And I'm glad I did, because I definitely go back.
No worries.
Anyway, that will be me shutting up now.
No, thank you. Danny, your turn.
All right. I am going to talk about the bees. Which is, every time I mention this book, Hannah and I have gone, the bees. Because it's just
not the bees.
Not the bees. And for me, I rarely read any like literary fiction. I am so intimidated by literary fiction. It scares the crap out of me. Like, if it's been nominated for a prize, count me out, because I am scared I'm not going to get it, because I've just got a bad rep. I've had a few really bad literary books in the past.
I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing at Ali's
no.
comment. Sorry.
Oh,
it just
I knew you were.
I was like, all I could hear was bees.
Yeah. And Hannah pitched this to me as B-movie meets Hunger Games, I think.
I never mentioned the B-movie. That never happened. That never happened. I said it is like the Hunger Games or Handmaid's Tale, but with bees, is what I said. I would never mention the B-movie. It's a terrible film, first of all. And also...
How dare you? How dare you slander B-movie? But totally different vibe if it was B-movie Hunger Games, because that's a whole different... I feel like it's a whole different show. You know?
Yeah, it's a B-movie.
Yeah, no, okay.
I'm just going to sit there and think about that. You keep talking.
But yeah, no, I definitely agree with the Handmaid's Tale meets bees. I didn't quite see Hunger Games in it so much. But basically it's about a bee, kind of like a worker bee that her name is Flora 717 because there's a bunch of them. And basically, the bees all have rankings.
Is that why you thought B movie? Because the girl in it is called Flora? Is that where that connection came from?
Maybe.
I hope not.
Because that's hilarious.
Shut up. Anyway, basically it's about Flora 717, who's worker bee, cleaner bee, who depending on what kind of like family lineage you have, you are assigned different roles. So you've got bees, and they're all bees, and they're all I'm sorry, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, it's God's sake. No, I can't focus on this. Anyway, it's all based on these fucking bees, okay? And you're so distracting, both of you.
Oh, no, I'm not apologizing. Like, the bee movie. Okay, so the difference with Flora 717 versus all the other bees is Flora goes through different jobs. And the idea with these bees is they are born to serve a purpose. And they kind of feel that they're in this complete utopia. But Flora 717 starts to see cracks of this utopia. She sees that the hive is dying. And she sees it in a way that none of the other bees do or believe her. And she kind of does something super dramatic that could make or break the hive because she starts to mutate. And bees don't do that. The only bee that ever changes is the queen. So
there's the Hunger Games reference. I see it straight away. Oh, sorry, but Ali is right again. Fucking bees, huh?
No, these are actual bees.
So the whole time it reads like a contemporary. It reads like they're people, but they're not. They're bees.
Yes. No, it all takes place in a hive. There are some humans in it, but only briefly, in the beginning and at the end.
Just like in the bee movie.
Yes! Except there's no romance between a human and a bee, because that's still weird to me. Would it have made this book better? No.
I think it's weird to everyone, Danny. That romance plotline was weird. I don't know why you then said it like it was only you that found it weird.
Bees.
Wait, Ali, have you ever seen the bee movie? Like,
they are actually bees.
Yeah. I want to read this book just because now Danny's made it even more wild by bringing bee movie into it. I'm like, I need to figure out where the bee movie adds in. Like, I really need to see this.
No, so Flora is meant to be a low level worker bee where she cleans. She makes sure that, you know, all the new eggs that have been laid by the queen, like she cleans out after they've been gone from their little wormy stage to actual bees, larvae. That's the word I'm looking for. Larva. But because she's bigger than all the other bees, and she's like, oh, maybe we can put you in something, like put you to a different job. Maybe you can try something else. So she job hops, which is not. I'm ignoring that comment, Ali. I'm really trying to get this out.
Thank you, Ali. Saying what we all think.
But so she's job hopping, and as she's doing this, because none of the other bees get to see that perspective, she sees, like Anna said, all these cracks forming in the hive, and where things are going wrong, and this kind of bureaucracy and like Handmaid's Tale. You've all got your place, but someone is controlling this basically, and it's not who you'd think it'd be. And
please tell me you did that on purpose.
I didn't.
That was an accident, wasn't it?
You can tell by Danny's face.
Not who you think it be. That's not how sentences form.
The reaction to Danny going to questioning Danny clinched the fact that Danny did not know what he was doing.
It's
No.
not be who you think it be.
But yeah, so Flora is kind of both the downfall and the savior of this hive, depending on what perspective you're on. But it was wild. I started this physically in one evening, one evening, and then after a while, I was like, nah, I'm gonna need to like listen to this, and I listened to all of it in a day. I was hooked. It's wacky, but it doesn't read like, you forget that they're bees at some point, and then suddenly they go, I'm cleaning my wing membranes, and I'm like, oh, or oh, here are the male bees who are like, suck my dick, except I'm not going to say dick, I'm going to say suck my something, or clean me. And I was just like, we don't know you. No, you don't mean cleaning right now.
I have a question for you. This was already a weird book. How did you make it sound weirder? Because, like, I want to read this book, but after you described a bee asking a female bee to suck their dick, I'm not sure I want to anymore. You killed it in one fell swoop.
There is a bit, right, where the princes are there to mate with the queen, right? That's literally their one purpose that they serve. And there is this bit where like he's like, oh, so you're one of these bees that like preps them, right? And it's like weirdly sexual between the bees, but it's one fucking scene. And when Danny's just
really
like,
stood out to me.
And then he's like, suck my dick. That never happened.
No, it's just so sexual.
It is the vibe, but that is not.
So is it like they're the fluffers before like a porn shoot happens? Is that basically what we're describing?
They're more like the people that come and hose you down afterwards.
Ew. Awful. I'm going to have to bleach that out of my brain before I go to bed tonight.
But yeah, I would recommend, so I would say to be, because it's so weird. But I loved it. I think I gave it 4 stars, maybe 4.5, rounded up to 5. I don't remember what I gave it, but it was really good. And after a while, I did forget they were bees, which is good, because otherwise I think I would not have kept it together. Not that I have kept it together. Let's be honest, I did not keep it together. But that's, now I get to be weird on someone else's channel instead of my own.
And I appreciate you. Anyone got any questions about the bees?
I have a question. So am I adding this to my TBR next month to join with all the other fucking weird ass books I'm reading next month?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
Sweet.
And Hannah, are you cool with it? I've put it in your sub box for next month.
Sure.
Hannah's just like, I don't care. Nothing phases me anymore.
How many references to honey are there in it?
I don't know.
What the fuck did Ali just send me?
What did Ali just send you?
No one knows. She sent it to you.
Oh, no. What is that? What is that?
That is
What
furry
is that?
porn, but furry bees.
That is incredible that you found that so quickly, Ali, and I'm
not
so
even surprised.
sorry.
Also, I would like to point out, I don't know what happened, but we had like a few people watching. It now says 0. I don't know what you did, but in that split second, they all went, you know what? Bee porn, not for me. We can say whatever we like because no one's watching right now.
Well done, Danny. You chased them all away.
No, I'm blaming Ali for this one. I'm blaming Ali for that completely. That's what I'm imagining. No, Ali, they are actually bees. Jesus,
I do like
Hannah,
how they
please,
describe the
no,
bumblebee.
Ali, stop. Hannah, please save us from the carnage and tell us about the book that was out of your comfort zone, please.
Okay, so like Lizzie, I try to read quite broadly. So I was a bit stumped what to read. So I went quite niche. And I did not enjoy my books like you did. So it was correct that I didn't really read them normally. So I picked up some epic poetry, translated epic poetry at that from like the Old English. So I picked 3, but I only read 2 in the end because I just couldn't anymore. So I have Sir Gawain. I meant to look up how you say it, but I forgot because I watched the film of this and I loved it, and they said it completely different. And so I'm like, do I say Gawain wrong? But yeah, I read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I read The Death of King Arthur. There's a theme, like it's all quite like Celtic. And the Mabinogi, which was the one I was looking most forward to and didn't read. So, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is the first one that I read. Interestingly, I read the same author for these 2. The last one was a different author, but again, I just kind of had enough at that point. I enjoyed this one the most. If you've seen the film, I've forgotten who's in it. He was in Slumdog Millionaire. But he plays Gawain in that. Sorry.
Dev Patel.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the film. It's quite close to this because I don't think he's tweaked it much. Like he mentions in this one that he has tweaked bits just because characters that died were then back like 30 pages later, alive and helping. So I know he tweaked bits of that one, but I don't think he tweaked this one very much. It's more just rather than a load of old English that doesn't really make sense to us anymore, he's kind of like updated the context so we understand it. It's quite short, like it is small, but it's just really dense. Like there's not a lot on a page, but like it's just never ending. It just goes and goes and goes and goes, and I couldn't find the rhythm for either of these for it being poetry. Like they normally have like a cadence sort of thing, and I just couldn't find it. So I'm just reading words that sound slightly weird in sentences together because I've got no rhythm to it. So I think that probably didn't help me. So I did tab them, and I think it started off kind of with purpose and then just evolves into anything. I was like, well, there's a death. That was kind of interesting. That might be a key point. I don't know. It kind of just devolved into chaos. So the tabs kind of mean nothing. I just carried up like on with it throughout all of it because I'd started and I was like, I'm not going to half tab a book because it feels like a waste of tab. But yeah, I did enjoy the Green Knight one more. And I do recommend the film. I think I'm looping. I'm very tired. But essentially, it was written in about the 1400s, I think, like around the 1400 mark, like early. But they don't actually know because the original, they don't know who wrote it. It's just popped up from like North Yorkshire. So not even anywhere near where most of Arthur's known for. So it's kind of set sort of Derbyshire area for like where the Green Knight's going to reside. And it's kind of Gawain finding his sort of fame, I suppose, because at the beginning he's Arthur's nephew, if I remember right, but he's like one lesser known at that point. And he takes up a challenge at Christmas where this knight, old and green, completely green, his horse is green, his blade's green, challenges them to behead him. And then in a year, get the same dealt back. And Gawain takes on that, and it's like, you know, what's probably going to happen at the end, sort of thing. And like his journey getting there by the end of the next year. I think the subject matter is probably what kind of kept me going the most. I think if it's about something not like I've already said, like I quite like folklore and myths and legends and stuff. If it wasn't about Arthur, I probably would have just given up way sooner and not even finished one of them. But then I moved on to The Death of King Arthur, and this was just like some propaganda about his war across most of Europe. I think it was just in Europe, but against like the Pope, because the Pope wanted taxes. So he's like, well, they're my lands historically, I'm taking them back, and just wages war. It's like, didn't really feel this one at all. And I thought this would probably be the more interesting one because, you know, Arthur's like the main guy. But no, it wasn't. It was quite boring. But seeing Gawain pop up was quite nice. And he's like the main guy, it feels like now. So I kind of like that I had read them together and started with that one because it was happenstance. I did not plan on reading them in any particular order. So if you are planning on reading some epic poetry, even though it wasn't for me, I would suggest like reading them that one first, then that one. Like they did kind of complement each other quite nicely. But yeah, it was not for me. I don't think. I think I gave them like 3 and 4 stars, but again, purely because of the subject matter, I think, more than anything. So yeah, we'll see if I read the Mabinogi at some point, but yeah, I don't know.
So what are the chances that you'll pick up another epic poem anytime soon?
Not high, not high. You never know, but not high.
Can I recommend a King Arthur retelling that is great though?
Yes,
or like
please.
the use of the King Arthur myth, which is Legendborn by Tracy.
Yes,
Young.
I love that. I
Because
just thought my list before it should have been on there.
That's a twist on the King Arthur myth that I thought was done very, very well, which included Black history and African history, and it talks about slavery, and it is just done so well. And as a King Arthur fan over here with the myth, it was one of my favorites that I read last year. That's a great King Arthur retelling. So if you want like a modern retelling and you're into King Arthur stuff and you haven't picked that one up, do.
Can
It's
I
also
also
got Dark
add to
Academia,
this?
isn't it?
Go on. Sorry, what did you say?
It's also got like Dark Academia to it as well.
Yes. Yeah, it does.
I don't know
Yeah.
what the hands are.
Dark Academia. Can I add Midnight Twins to that as well, which is about twins who discover that they are part of an Arthur society that basically goes into people's dreams to protect them. And there are these demons that can attack people and take over their minds through sleep. But it's they're basically trained as knights in sleep and stuff like that. But it very much leans on the Arthur retellings rather than is a direct retelling of the story. It just kind of like leans on the myth. But I really like the way it's done. And it's a really fun story. It's sibling rivalry, which I don't get to read enough of. And again, zero romance in that one. So I always feel like I need to say that because I know sometimes people are like, I love a YA, but it's always like really like, and love triangle. This one, there isn't one.
Oh yeah, warning with Legendborn, there is a love triangle. You
There is a
remind
love
me.
triangle.
And it's the most stupid fucking love triangle too.
To be fair though, like for me, Legendborn is the book that I recommend to people when they tell me, oh, I'm thinking of rereading all of Cassandra Clare's books. And I'm like, no, read this instead because it has a very similar writing style, but it's just so much better for like thousands of reasons. It is so much better.
I've got such hopes for the second book where there's one way where they can sell me on the love triangle, and that's by not making a love triangle.
No, I think the whole point is the first book is a love triangle and the second one will not be. For the reasons that happened that made it a love triangle in the first place.
Yeah, no.
Which I don't want to spoil, but there is a love triangle in it, and I think it's dumb. But like, I don't like love triangles, so that also doesn't help.
I'm not the biggest fan of love triangles, but I did think that for a love triangle, that one was well done. I still think it's dumb, but I was like, I kind of see it. Like, if I was in her position, same. Also, I was like, do I have anything to recommend? Arthur? No, just Legendborn. That's all I've read.
That's fine. That's fine.
Let's
swing back round to Hannah then. I know earlier we were discussing that you weren't sure what you're going to read for favourites. So for everyone paying attention, next month you can drink whichever of the cocktails that we've had previously, and I have left the list down in the description. You do not have to read a prompt from that cocktail. You just have to pick your favourite cocktail. And we're going to be talking about our favourite books. And it also means we can talk about our favourites from the ones we've read for this book club, but also just in general. So do you have like a top 3 you're thinking, or like a top author you're considering reading for favourites next month?
So looking at the cocktails we've drunk, because I was just going to make an espresso martini, but we've not drunk one of them.
No, we've had a fruity martini, but that's about it.
Yeah, I did like that, but I think I've just noticed we have mulled cider, and that's always going to be a winner with me. So I'm going to be drinking mulled cider, even though it's May. And then if I'm going my favourite, I'll probably go. I've already mentioned that it's my favourite book, The Name of the Wind. But I also kind of don't want to reread something I've read before. So I'm tempted to just go with a new book to me by a favourite author. Patrick Rothfuss, I think I've read them all, so that doesn't work. But you mentioning Sylvia Moreno Garcia before, she's also another favourite. I think I've read 3 of them so far. So I might pick up another one of hers. Otherwise, my other idea is I might just go with something that has like one of my favourite tropes, and I've just got to figure out what my favourite trope is. I do like an enemies to lovers just because of all the banter. But I'm also, there's probably loads of tropes that I don't realise they're like a thing that I like. So I've probably got to do some research because, yeah. I
love that. No, I love that you've got so many options though, because I think with your favourites, the whole point of this book club is that because we're all reading different things, we can champion different books and people can walk away with a long list of things they could read. Bless you, Danny. So I love the fact that you're like, yeah, it could be this one, it could be that one. And like Danny and I were talking the other day about how we both read The Love Hypothesis very recently, but we would be so tempted to reread it for favourites. Unfortunately, I cannot reread books within a year. I just can't do it. I always want to, and I always end up ruining it for myself because I just skip massive chunks. But I think, no, I'm really excited to see what you pick up, and hopefully that it will actually be a really positive live show next month because we're just talking about things that we love.
Yeah. Very different to this one.
Very different to this one. We had it started all right, and then it just turns out.
I mean, I consider we're doing out of comfort zone.
That's what I mean. Like, I think that's the thing is when you realize that it's not a comfort zone thing. It's that you're on your own taste really well. Because I don't think there's any of us here that only reads like one genre. So reading a slightly different genre is out of our comfort zone. We all read really diversely. So when it's out of your comfort zone, it's because it's literally something you wouldn't pick up. Like, because you just aren't going to like it. So it is hard to talk about those things positively. So that's totally fair. What about you, Danny?
So I had a few ideas, or rather, Hannah had a few ideas, and I might steal them, or rather. So what I might do is pick up some of my favourite romances that I've read over the past couple of years, which would include Red, White, and Royal Blue, which Lizzie's like, oh, fuck's sake.
No, the face was the way you said it, because I'm like, you love that book, but the way you said it made it sound like you fucking hated it. Sorry, not sorry.
No, that was me trying to think of other books at the same time. That was me trying to multitask. Red, White, Royal Blue. Blue. Love Hypothesis, obviously, because I really enjoyed that. One of the Brown sisters, either Chloe or Eve. I didn't like Danny. It might be, I don't know.
I'm currently reading that one, and it's just not as good as Chloe Brown. Like, I'm with you on that. Yeah,
I'm just gonna miss the tension. There's not as much tension. And then 3 is just very cute. It's very cottagecore-y, which I like. So I'm thinking about maybe rereading some of those, but at the same time, because of all the announcements that we've been getting recently, I really want to reread Percy Jackson as well. Like, I want to, at least the first one, because I've only just finished that series, but it took me like a long time. So I'm tempted to reread the first of that series. So I don't know, but I think for this thing, I'm gonna go for favorite romance, overall, or whatever it might be. And for the drink, it's probably going to be Dark and Stormy, because I love me one of those.
I love me one of those. That's fair enough. And Lizzie?
For the drink, it's going to be Passion Fruit Martini, because fruity. So I was pretty sure what I was going to read, but I don't know if it's the right time of year, because I would like to reread The Night Circus, which until very, very recently was my favorite book of standalone. And I kind of want, as you might be able to tell with how much I tabbed it, and I kind of want to see if it deserved to be knocked off its throne. But I very much associate this story with winter and cold and like slower, cooler months, and kind of like building up to like holiday season. Like that's how I view it. So I don't know if reading it in May, leading up to the hottest part of the year, is going to do it any favors.
I mean, I'm drinking mulled cider.
I know, but I feel like you'll only suffer through that for one evening. I'm going to have to reread this, and I don't want to completely destroy my love for it.
Yeah.
So that's my only worry, but it's still on the list. I could also reread Clara and the Sun, but I literally read that in January. I think it was January. It's the January or February, but it very quickly toppled this book off its throne because I adored it. But again, I think it's too soon. Like Hannah says, I feel like I need to give it at least 6 months to a year before I pick that up again. I'm also currently doing a reread of Lord of the Rings, so I could just talk about that because that is my favorite series of all time. But I then also had a thought of, because I enjoyed Clara and the Sun, I did not like Never Let Me Go, though, by the same author, but I also want to read Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. So I'm tempted to get a copy of Remains of the Day in and see how that holds up. Because I know if I don't like that, I have everything else I've just mentioned. But I also was thinking one of my favorites from the book club that I've read so far is The Gilded Ones by Naomi Fauna.
Name of former, yeah.
Oh, I pulled that one out of my head. I panicked for a second there, because I liked the the start of the series that she's starting on now. I thought it was a really good first book. It did great in world building. So if I was going to revisit a Bevvies and Books book, that was the first one I read, funnily enough, for this book club, and it's probably the best one I've read for it, because I've not had a great run on what I've read for this book club, which is really unfortunate. And I just need to get better at picking books, I think.
Or being okay with dropping it halfway through the month and picking up something else. Their Gilded Ones sequel has come out or is coming out soon.
Oh.
I can check the date for you, but I'm pretty sure it's out or it's on its way.
And you saying you've not had a good run. You have, I've just had a look at the average host stats and you're second highest.
Yeah, but that's only because of probably Sundial, because I was at the bottom before this month.
Fair enough.
Because I checked.
I think that's also because I probably haven't entered my stats at all, because I'm useless. So unless Hannah's done it for me, in which case
I have done some.
Thanks. Not gonna lie, I lost the link for it for ages. I had to find it again anyway. So,
but I am thinking about doing a poll on Twitter, so people on Twitter can choose for me.
I like that. Well,
and on the new
Instagram.
The new Instagram that we have.
We'll get to that. Don't worry, we'll get there. It's in the description as well. I will be reading Ecstasia because then I don't have to TBR it again, because this came up as the cat pick for horror this month, just gone. And I'm just going to carry it over. And essentially, Claire Legrand wrote Saw Kill Girls. It was the first book by Claire Legrand I'd ever read, even though I do now own all 3 of the Furyborn series. But I loved her horror. I read it around the same time that I read Wilder Girls, and I just thought it was superior in 100 different ways that the internet completely disagrees with, but I loved it. So I'm really, really excited for this, which is her newest release, her newest horror. I know almost nothing about it other than it's a gothic horror written by Claire Legrand. That's all I needed to know. So this is what I will be reading, and I'm very excited about it. But yes, as Lizzie said, we now have a Bevvies and Books Instagram, which Lizzie is kind of running for us, but we all post different photos to Lizzie so that she can share them with captions about our books that we've picked or things that we're reading throughout the month. So if you want to know in advance what it is we're reading or what we're currently reading or our thoughts as the month progresses, go to that link in the description down below. Make sure you are following us so that you can get all that up-to-date information. We will always be having our live streams on the last Sunday of the month, so you can always guarantee that in the lead up, specifically in that week, we will be reminding you where to be. We may well be on my channel again next month. We might be on Lizzie's. Who knows? We'll mix it up. I think moving around is probably for the best for us anyway. But I'm really excited for us to talk about our favorites because it will be our official anniversary. We'll have been doing this for ages. So I'm excited. So before we disappear, is there anything anyone else wants to hype or promote whilst we are here?
Yes.
Go on.
I got to 100 subscribers. So anyone who found me through Bevvies and Books, thanks.
Congratulations. Sorry, I had my mouthful. Congratulations.
I just needed to, mention it because, I'm very happy about it.
Yeah, no, good for you.
You should be.
I'm sorry if I sounded sarcastic. I'm genuinely congratulations.
Same.
I thought I was muted still. I just realised I am not.
Hannah's just like...
I was like, I'll just nod because obviously you can't hear me, but no, you can hear me.
Congrazzles.
Thanks.
Yeah, read Soccer Girls. It's so good. It's so good. Danny, anything you want to promote?
No.
Okay, great. Hannah?
I mean, I have kind of low-key returned back to Bookstagram, I guess, because I kind of stopped posting for several months. So I guess there's that. Same
again,
thing.
Links down below. Everyone's Insta is down below because I was on it, like a carb on it this month. I was really proud of myself. I scheduled it weeks in advance, put all the info in. It's almost like I'm a professional now or some shit. I don't know. But if you could go over to Waypoint Books and treat yourself to something, it supports me and my content, and I'd really appreciate it. And other than that,
Get Bridesmaid Survival Guide. It's great.
Blah 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 blah.
Have a look at them. Have a look at the boxes. The full moon and the half moon box. They are great.
Basically, buy from Hannah because she's amazing, and if you want recommendations, jump into her DMs. She is the best.
Jump into those DMs, and other than that, I'm just gonna bye.